think when it comes to dating apps and intentionally choosing the photos for your dating apps, it's even like a heart posture. Like, why do you feel beautiful if your tatas are out? You know, like, why does that make you confident? Like, it's not based on your assets. It's like truly like who you are and a light that really shines from within.
One of the big problems of dating days, most people are only thinking about these aspects of superficiality, and the dating apps don't help. I've literally seen just like this fast swiping left. And I'm like, what are you looking at?
Our nature is a good thing. God created us for a purpose. If you want to have a good conversation with the guy, maybe like it could be a good approach to not
wear a turtleneck, ladies.
Well, there's a balance.
Yeah.
There's a balance.
Full
But do you see what I'm saying?
No, not a single shoulder must be.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Intentional Dating. Today we have the privilege and the honor to speak with Naomi Leanage and Sean Afable. Thank you both so much for being here.
Yeah. Hey everyone, my name is Naomi. I'm a full-time content creator. I create a lot of like lifestyle vlogs. Recently documenting my dating life on an account called the Hopeful Romantics Club. And yeah, I've been doing it for like 6 years now. I also recently founded a startup, but that's kind of where I'm at in life right
Cool.
now.
Oh, so great.
Yeah, that's a lot going on.
Yeah.
My name is Sean Afable. I grew up as an actor out here in LA, and I started doing a dating podcast a while ago. It was like a live stream on the #1 Filipino live stream app called Kumu. And so that was very interesting to see different perspectives, and then also, some really good arguments and stuff back and forth. It was definitely a wild ride, but been doing a bunch of different content, and yeah.
Well, super excited to learn from you today. This is fantastic to have you both here.
We'll see. We'll learn from each other. It's okay.
Yeah.
We're so excited to have you both. Oh my gosh, we have so much to talk about.
Yes. I think there's some crazy stats out there where it's like 9 out of 10 people right now who go on a date are meeting on a dating app or online or through like, I don't know, a Twitch stream or something. Like, you know what I mean? Like people are just meeting online. It's all virtual. And so we got to establish some rules around this. We got to figure out how to do it because it seems a little bit like the Wild West.
It does seem like the Wild West. How do you guys feel about the dating apps?
Ooh, I am very anti-dating app. Last year I actually did a series where once a month I was trying a different dating app. So I feel like I've tried them all for the most part.
We gotta
and quickly
talk about this. We
realized
gotta
this
talk
is
about
not
this.
the love story God's writing for me. But
Okay.
my sister met her fiance on an app, so I don't completely hate it, but I think that we can all discern whether it's for us or not.
Oh, that's interesting. I don't know if I'm throwing it on the bus, but my brother half met his wife on a dating app.
How do you have
They were
it?
good
What is
because
happening?
okay, so don't kill me, bro, but they were going to be introduced by some friends actually, and then they end up actually meeting through a Catholic dating app. And but they actually had known and kind of run in the same circles. They had met previously, I think, a couple of years prior to that. But then they were going to be introduced, but they ended up actually starting to talk through a Catholic dating app.
Got it. So they were already kind of running in the same circles a little bit, but the dating app was just really like what solidified having conversations,
exactly.
talking. Yeah, okay.
So it just kind of happened. Happened that way. I don't think he didn't have a problem with that. It just happened to be that they had met in Hawaii, and then he moved back to California, so it was easier to reconnect that way.
Yeah, they like have to reconnect
we
that way.
often think of the dating apps as this. One of the negative aspects of it is that it's this vast tool to be able to reach anybody anywhere, and really, actually, in this case in particular, you can use it actually to just find more meaningful connections, closer connections within a community that's already like smaller.
And I would say to your point, Naomi, is like if you're on some of these more what do you call them? I guess mainstream dating apps and stuff. I think that you're going to have a much harder time. You can probably attest to this. Finding somebody you're going to be like-minded with, share the same values with,
Right.
And you're gonna find that maybe there's a needle in a haystack, but there's probably a lot of hay.
If there's ever a place to be wildly picky and wildly specific, it's on the dating apps.
For sure.
That is the way to do it.
Well, Allie, you were talking about how you should be extremely picky on dating apps.
Yes.
I agree with that because all of those like the natural vetting process of meeting somebody like within your community or your broader community in person in real life, there's like a natural vetting process that happens there and you don't have that online.
I wanted to ask Naomi, what was your experience? Like, can you just walk us through that?
Yeah, I feel like the reason why I was like so turned off from dating apps is like you would meet up with this guy and within 5 seconds I'm like, if I'd met you in real life, I know I would not want to spend an hour and a half with you. And a lot of my friends are mitigating that by like doing FaceTime dates or phone calls, but it's just so time consuming. And yeah, again, I think dating apps just take away like the humanity aspect of it. Like you lose a sense of, yeah, you could judge him based on what he believes and how he looks, but it's like without seeing their personality or like feeling for how they talk. It just, I don't know, it wasn't worth my time personally.
So was it that you were kind of, there was like a lack of physical attraction with most of them? Or was it like their energy was off? Like what was that? Yeah, were they a lot of catfishes? Like what was the, like generally speaking, or even specifically, like
Photoshop 6-packs, you know?
Yeah, right.
That's probably.
Yeah, I would definitely say like attraction, not just like physical, but even like energy wise. And like for me, I'm like humor is a big thing. Totally. So I was definitely missing that. And then again, like a lot of these guys would claim to be Christian, and then you start talking about faith, and it's like, oh, I go to church on like Christmas and Easter. I'm like, that doesn't count, or that doesn't cut it for me personally, you know?
Right.
I have something to say. You know,
say it, Allie. Say it.
You got this.
Say it. Okay.
Don't hold back.
My whole thought process on this is that men who are great at dating are typically not great at relationships. I feel like this should be like my bumper sticker because I say this all the time. But there are a lot of really good guys that are just not great at dating. I remember we had this client, and he was an attorney, very successful, kind. And he said to us, he was like, I figured it out. I'm a 3-date kind of guy. Like on the first date, when I first meet a woman, I am nervous. Like I am a nervous wreck. I'm just nervous. Yeah. But then the second date, it's like, okay, she accepted a second date with me. There's an inkling of hope. There's an ember of hope there. But then on the third date, he can finally relax. Yeah. So I would almost challenge you, Miss Naomi, and other women, just allow these guys to unfold a little bit more and give them grace, because I just hear it every single day from the good guys, because the bad guys, not the bad guys, they're not bad. They're just ill-intentioned. They date a lot. They're bonding quickly to these women because they date a lot, and they basically are dating too.
They know how to do it. They're very comfortable with that interaction because they do it so often, but that's the problem.
That's the problem.
The problem is that Satan is an angel of light, and so sometimes he comes across as being great.
Oh, he sure does.
I think of dating is the same thing. If you find somebody who's just like the guy who just pushes all the buttons, I mean, think why is he that way? Why is he able to say these things? What has he really studied? I mean, I think there's a lot of really guys. I know a lot of friends. Friends who they're really good people, but they're not the best all the time with what to say. They might be nervous. They might be intense. Like it just kind of depends on your personality. Yeah. But if you judge somebody based off of like, you know, kind of like whether or not they're so smooth and stuff, like that's a little bit shallow too.
So would you agree with this idea of giving them 3 dates? Because that gives the guy time to like loosen, or the girl time to loosen up.
I don't know.
Unless you're repulsed. If you are repulsed by a man, you don't have to give them a second date. If you are repulsed, but that is the bar. If they have all of the qualities that you're looking for, aka they have a wonderful career, they're the compatible religion, they're a man of God, they're doing this. You've background checked them. You can use any of the background check services. That's fine. They're clearly, you social media search them as well. They're not married. They're not engaged. They're not in a relationship. Yep. Give them, unless you are repulsed, give them a second date. But what do you guys think of that? Naomi, does that in any way, are you like, ugh, Allie, you're so annoying. Like, what is that? How do you feel? Is that something that you could possibly invite into the way that you're dating?
Yeah, no, I think you're popping my bubble in a good way, because I definitely have this like romanticized view of what dating should be like. Because my story and a big part of my even dating journeys that I document online is that I've never been in a relationship before. So I actually have never been past a second date. And I definitely had that like mindset where it's like the Mr. Perfect, it's gonna lock eyes with me and then we're gonna walk off into the sunset. But yeah, I've learned even from friends where it's like the spark even can build and grow. And a lot of them say by the third date you will know yes or no. But yeah, I don't know. I'm like I don't know. I still feel like
Yeah.
you can tell by that in-person connection right away, but I don't know.
I would tend to agree with you that by that first meeting, there's gotta be something. And I don't mean like I knew from the first moment I saw her that she was gonna be my wife. I felt like the universe collided. No, nothing like that. But like, I think I agree with you, Allie, where it's like, as long as you're not repulsed, I think that's enough.
But that's
like that
we
could
tell
be
women
something.
that.
Could be something.
See, this is the thing.
You have to have a good read on them.
Okay, and this is where I get in trouble. So, to be completely honest, we tell women this, that unless you're repulsed by them, give them a second date. We don't really say that to men. We don't. I'm just being honest. We don't really say that.
And why is that?
Because basically, I really earnestly was asking, like, is it a thing where a guy can like grow in attraction? And they affirmed basically no. Like basically it's either for men, for women, it's different. Women, and this is why I think society does us such a disservice by like acting like, oh, we're so similar. We are not similar.
This is why dating apps don't work, I think, in that sense. Because if you're being so specific, a lot of times what you see, of course, there's certain cues, obviously, like this person doesn't seem like they're really going to be a match at all. But I think that all you're seeing most of the time is like a picture and a short little bio. You're not going to know much from that.
Yeah.
So what you're kind of teaching, I think what's happening is you're only looking for, and I've heard this from so many girls, he has to be 6 feet tall. Yep. He has to have like a really nice car in his photo. Like it's all these like superficial things. And
if a guy has a car in his photo, I'm sorry, that's so weird.
Or a fish.
Fish.
Gosh.
Why? Fishing is awesome.
Sorry,
No, I've gotten so much trouble
advocating for the
saying
guys
this.
with fishes.
I'm not saying put a fish on there, but fishing is awesome.
I know. I love it, dude.
Why is that
I love
one?
fish.
Why is so bad?
I love it.
The
It's
girls
so
don't
much
like
fun.
it.
I don't know if I'd put a
It's
fish
so
on
much
mine.
fun, but it's not going to help in the dating profile.
The girls do not like the fish photos. I don't know what it is. Naomi, I wanted to get your take on that. What are things that you would see that would just be complete like absolutely no?
Absolutely
if you were to
not.
see? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely fish photos are top 3 no's. I think like the selfies where it's like super close to their face also. It's like, guys, just ask a friend, a sister to take a photo of you.
I think that a good profile that would look like really nice and presentable and like, oh, I think I'd really like to ask that person out would be just a very clear photo of the woman, not, maybe not too much makeup. Some is great. I think most guys will agree, but it should look like you. You know what I mean? It should look like you, and just a nice presentable photo, and make sure that we know which person in the photo is the person we're asking out or
Yes. That's a big
messaging.
one.
Like sometimes you'll get there's like, you'll see like on Hinge or something, you'll see like 10 different people, and you're like, which girl? The description is great. I just don't know who you are. So like, make it clear who you are, what you're about, and put your non-negotiables on the profile as well. Those things that are like, whatever, like if you're like, I am a Baptist and my whole family is Baptist and this is the faith that I grew up on and I feel close to Christ in this community, so Baptist is a non-negotiable for me. You know what I mean? Something like that, or whatever your denomination might be. I'd say have that, or if you want a family, say interested in family, kids, you know what I mean? Long-term relation, like just be clear about what your intentions are. And you probably don't need more than that. And just start messaging and then quickly get off the app and meet them in person.
The hardest topic I ever went through when I was doing my own podcast was actually about modesty. It was like one of the biggest pushbacks. But the truth is that if you're extremely immodest, you're going to get the type of attention, but not from the right people, right? And I think that's that. Man, they're gonna jump through the screen. But here's the truth. I've seen it with Christian women, Catholic women, all kinds of women. Sorry, I'm getting a little nervous because I know this topic is like so volatile with a lot of people's minds and a lot of people's perspectives. Because as soon as you mention the word modesty, there's like this visceral reaction.
Oh, yeah.
And
like don't control me almost? Or
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pushback there.
Right.
And I think it kind of boils down to, I think men's classic vice is lust. Women's classic vice is usually vanity, right? So those two play on each other. So you have things like Instagram, and what's happening on Instagram. You got a lot of immodesty and a lot of, and
a lot of guys
and
indulging
a
in
lot
that.
of
a lot of guys contributing to
exactly,
it.
and
so there's a market
validation and
for
everything
it.
else. So
yeah, right.
obviously they know it's attention grabber, but the question is what kind of attention are you getting from? What kind of quality of men are you getting that attention from? Because I think that deep down, a man who's really traditional, wants a family, wants to have something real. Men want exclusivity to intimacy.
Yeah. And
so if you're very showy and stuff, that's going to be, they might find you physically very attractive, but that's actually going to be, you're heightening the physical attraction, but you are lowering the emotional attraction. Yeah. And that's what John Paul II, Carol Wojtyła, talks about, is like, you have these two sides of us as human beings, the the physical attraction, that's the initial, right? But then you have the emotional attraction. And so if what you are putting out there is only the physical attraction, well, then, it's kind of like, it's like fishing. The type of bait you use is going to attract the type of fish you're going to attract.
That's right.
So if what you're putting out there is something very superficial and shallow, well, you're probably going to attract somebody who's also looking for something very superficial and shallow.
And this isn't to say that your future husband, your future spouse does not want you to be attractive. I mean, he wants to be attracted to you, obviously, but there's a place for it. There's a place for it, and it's in a committed relationship. It's not the very first thing you go to. You shouldn't let the physical intimacy outpace the emotional and spiritual intimacy. They all got to come together at the right time.
So I have a complicated relationship with that, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying.
I hear you, Allie. I think it is true that, and that's okay.
Yes.
To dress for your friends or your peers who are women. I think that's fine if you enjoy that. However, I think the caveat is this is specifically a dating app.
For dating apps.
You know what I mean? We're in the context of that. And we're not saying like this is how you conduct yourself in. Well, I think it's probably a good idea to not. Some level of modesty for men and women certainly is a good idea.
But I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with dressing for the male gaze either. I think it's within reason, right? Like, I think it's like, it's okay to dress in a very feminine way that is for, like, if I'm going on a date night with my beloved, like, you better believe I am snatched, like, I am wearing a very, like, a beautiful dress.
Do you think that you can find the happy medium between,
yes.
Or not even a happy medium, but a really beautiful embrace between feminine and modest?
Absolutely. I love that. Naomi, how do you feel about this? Because it's a hot topic, and I want to just unpack it a little bit,
Yeah, and I think when it comes to dating apps and intentionally choosing the photos for your dating apps, it's even like a heart posture. Like, why do you feel beautiful if your tatas are out? Like, why does that make you confident? And for me, again, like in my 20s, I also wore, stuff like that to the club and all that. And now it's like, no, I actually feel my most confident and beautiful when I'm like smiling with my friends or doing something I enjoy, like traveling and all of that. So I think it even comes down to like, ladies, like, where do you get your confidence from? Like, it's not based on your assets. It's like truly like who you are and a light that really shines from within. And I know that's so cheesy, but like getting to that point was really when I like became my most confident self versus like when I had especially like even my body's changed. Like in my 20s, I did have like ideal body. And now it's like, maybe like, I just don't need that or need to achieve that to be beautiful. Whereas before I'm like, I need to starve myself so I can have a flat stomach to be beautiful,
Yes. Oh, I love that.
I've been sucking in this whole time.
Oh, no. Listen, it's a journey. I'm not going to lie because I think it is a journey. It is a journey. It's a hard thing for me to wrap my brain around, but I do think it's really advisable for women that are looking for their partners to exactly not have a bikini photo up and not be like, super scantily clad, like with a, bottle up, like dancing at the club.
Isn't it weird that 24/7 on social media, anybody can go on there and just ogle whoever they want and whatever they're wearing at any time, in any place? It's just a little strange, isn't it?
Definitely. I think a lot of those accounts are even like akin to porn.
So I think a big part of dating with intention is presenting ourselves in a way that we would ideally want to be seen.
Yes.
Really, because we can participate in being the change. And it's kind of like correcting this a little bit.
Yeah.
And we could each do that. I've been honest about my feelings about dating apps. I'm not the biggest fan. But There's one that's changing how people meet online and fostering real formation in dating with purpose. SacredSpark is a new dating app that eliminates the burnout of endless swiping and facilitates meaningful, human-centered connections with people that are serious about finding godly relationships, not fleeting attention or validation. The app brings you curated matches with people who share your faith, interests, and values, creating an intentional dating culture different from many mainstream apps. And the app's matchmaker function replaces algorithms and ads with community-driven matching. So, even if you're like me and you've already found the love of your life, you can help your friends find love by being their matchmaker on the app. If you're single and looking for faithful relationships, check out SacredSpark and start meeting like-minded singles. Available on the App Store and Google Play.
I also, you know what, Sean, I will even say, when I was in my last single season, I had a guy friend that I really respected like just look through my one of my dating app profiles, and I had this picture of me in a pink dress that I was like, oh my gosh, I look so amazing. Like I just was like, oh, it's so cute. And I didn't really see I guess I'm not the best modesty police at all, but I had a guy friend and he was like, you know what, Allie, like that picture right there, he's like, you look like a lot of fun. And he's like, are you trying? Like, what are you trying? Are you trying? And I was like, oh my gosh, you're so right. And like, I'm a matchmaker. Like, I know these things. But I think there is that balance of like, how are you presenting yourself to attract?
Yeah.
Thank you for unpacking this with me, you guys.
Yeah.
We're
If I may say one more thing, it's like
please.
the thing is about modesty and whatnot is if you're dressed a certain way and you're showing a lot of skin and whatnot, right? It's very difficult for a guy to approach, not because he's maybe he's partly intimidated, but the other part is that, I mean, sometimes, be honest, like, it's hard to look anywhere because it's like, let's be honest, with men,
with a nature.
Yeah.
it's like magnets. Like, it's just magnets. We're like hardwired to, hardwired visual, right?
I totally hear what you're saying, Sean. I want to make sure, like, it's clear that, like, this is not in any way like a blaming.
No.
Like being like, why are you presenting that way? I'm so distracted. It's totally your fault. That is the opposite of what we're saying. What we're saying is, it's in our nature as men to find women beautiful and to cherish them. And because ultimately, that's what you want in a marriage. You want a husband who cherishes his wife and values her and loves how beautiful she is. And so our nature works. Our nature is a good thing. God created us for a purpose. And so it's like kind of like, well, if you want to have a good conversation with the guy, maybe like it could be a good approach to not
wear a turtleneck, ladies.
Well, there's a balance. Yeah. There's a balance.
Full burqa.
No, not a single shoulder must be.
I knew that's how I was going to come across.
No. I'm just kidding.
I know, it's my fault.
No, but there's a balance to be
No, I get it. No, guys, you guys, I understand what you're talking about.
So guys, no fish, and girls, turtlenecks.
Turtlenecks only. But guys, speaking of bodies, I want to go into dating body language.
Yes.
So let's talk about body language. In-person body language, a Gen Z having its own language.
Yeah. Can we actually go to the digital body language side of this?
Let's
because we're talking about apps, I kind of want to pivot towards specifically texting and how people like, okay, so I'm a millennial, but I'm not like upper end of millennial. I'm kind of in the middle. And some of this I get, some of this I really don't understand. There's meaning. So I've been told there's meaning carved into like every single emoji in a text and the way, like timing of texting and, just the way people do that. I'm looking to learn. Probably others out there are looking to learn, like, how are we communicating via text? Is there a proper like etiquette around this? Is there a good way to do it, a bad way to do it, to like lead people on or to be intentional with folks? I am really looking to learn. So Naomi, would you help us out a little bit?
Yeah, someone with so much experience. Not a lot.
You're online a lot.
Yeah, I think communication in the beginning is key, like talking to each other and being like, how often should we be texting? Like, do you expect a good morning text or not? Or is that too clingy? Because I think everyone has a different kind of expectation. And so communication is like the key to all successful relationships, or so I hear. And so not being afraid to have that conversation with someone you're starting to like talk to a lot, I think is good. Because I personally hate it when someone's like texting every hour of the day. Like, just check in once a day. That's cool. Or for example, even like if you're about to set up a first date, like, do you expect to hear from them the day of to confirm or not? Because I know a lot of people are like, oh no, when it's in my calendar, it's in my calendar. But then there's some people who's like, if I don't hear from you, then is it even happening? So yeah, just communication. Like, we need to make it normal to like just ask people what their style is.
Yeah, and would you say that, you know, from what you've seen with your friends, from yourself, all of these things, like if you're communicating with people regularly through text, like is this more helpful? Like has texting helped us to communicate effectively with other people, or is it something that is like a crutch to not have to talk to them in person?
Ooh, that's good. Yeah, I think in the early stages, it's ideal to text less.
Yeah, keep a little mystery.
Yeah, like the texting should just be for like confirming dates or like confirming phone calls even. Like really, taking it off.
I've definitely had, well, you know, not in, okay, so in my past self with dating, the unsuccessful relationships, I would say it was a lot of like, just texting back and forth till 2 a.m, just revealing secrets and just like totally like, you know, leading each other on. Like, and you're not like trying to necessarily, but it's just like there's all this emotional connection, and it's the opposite of emotional chastity, just kind of like happening via text. I think it's really unhelpful.
Yeah, I think it gives a false sense of intimacy.
Yes, that's what it is.
Yeah, it's
Totally.
a false sense of intimacy. I remember when I was dating, I all of a sudden had matched with this guy, and then within the second that I matched with him, it was like, hi, how are you? Blah, 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 blah. It was like literally every single second of the day. And I was, at first I was like, oh, okay, this is a lot. So I would like pace it and I would reply when I was able to reply. But then it almost became like this little, and then he asked me out on a date. He put it in the calendar. So I was like, oh, okay, he's asked me on the date. He's a big communicator. He's a big texter. Great. He'll get a little pass. It's fine. It's better than somebody that's not communicating at all. But then I realized that it was building this false sense of intimacy. And I didn't even know this man. And then I remember when then I finally did meet him for a date. He like barely spoke, and I was like, "Bro, are you good?"
Huge red flag.
I was like, "Oh,"
because he said everything in text, so he had nothing else to say.
Yet he's so communicative through text.
And you know, it's funny.
Communicative.
Is they always say like, you know, the tips for guys is like, you know, let her talk, ask her questions, and let her, because then they'll feel good and stuff. But then in this situation, you're like, oh, this isn't working, because you could see like he wasn't really contributing. He was just kind of letting you talk, and there wasn't really like a balance there with the communication.
And also, especially because he had set it up that he was this over communicator. He had so much to say to you and, you know, entertain you with. Yeah. And then he meets you in person, and it's like, no, this is not the same relationship as we have virtually.
Yeah.
I think that's a big, big problem.
I think it's a big problem. I think a lot of women can be easily love bombed via too much communication too soon, or they get into the pen pal zone where they have somebody that it's like this crutch that they're texting every day, and like maybe, you know, he's not asking you out. I feel like we get this so many times when we do date coaching with women. They're like, well, can you look at these messages? Like, I talk to this man every day. Like, he always checks in, but like, he hasn't set a date. Like, we went on one date, but it's been now 3 weeks. Like, what's going on? And then we're like, girl, you know, if he needs to book a date. Otherwise, it's a big red flag. I think it shows that either he's entertaining other connections romantically, or he's already in a relationship and doesn't actually have the physical time to meet with you.
Yeah, texting shouldn't be your primary form of getting to know this human.
Yeah.
I think that's really misleading, and it's strange because you can't have a person apart from their physical presence, their physical body. We are body and spirit together. And if you're just reaching into the mind of this person, or that's all they're revealing, it's like something's wrong. Something is missing. I feel like there's a lack of a fullness here.
Yeah.
I think it was Jason Everett said like you can meet somebody online, but you can't date somebody online. You actually have to date. You have to be in person to see and feel who they are as a person. And your instincts are pretty good too sometimes.
And
sometimes.
that speaks to Naomi, what you were saying about that energy of when you get to that first date and the person is different than who they were on the app. It's like, because your personhood is so much more rich and complex than just the 5 bullet points of this is who I am. It's like, no. Because you can be around somebody and you're not even really saying something to each other. You're just in the same room, maybe doing something together. You know, you're I don't know, building a puzzle in silence.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, and you still kind of like are getting to know them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And texting is so low effort too, where it's like you are worth someone like planning a date for.
Yeah,
So it's like,
right.
ladies, stop being a pen pal.
Yes.
The thing is, a lot of people think in terms of possibilities, but they don't think in terms of probabilities. And then here's the thing too, if you're so focused on these aspects of superficiality, you know, whether, okay, yes, he needs to, granted, he needs to be able to provide, he needs to be able to protect, he needs to be able to lead, guide, have all these different things. But if you're looking at only material stuff, are you actually looking and seeing whether or not he has sufficient virtue to be a good husband, a good father? One of the big problems of dating days, most people are only thinking about these aspects of superficiality, and the dating apps don't help because it really trains your mind to think, okay, I'm looking at whether he's really good looking and whether he's 6 foot. I've literally seen, I'm not saying names, people I know, just like this fast swiping left. And I'm like, what are you looking at? How could you even see well, I'm just saying if he's over 6 foot. And so if we're looking at that aspect, we're looking at the money aspect, we're looking at these certain things, will you ever get to know them on that level, whether or not they actually can be a good husband, a good father, and have sufficient virtue to be that?
Totally.
Right.
It has to be, of course, I really think that there's a happy medium
Yes.
because I think that I don't think it's terrible for a woman to want a man who has a good career or is in a very stable place in his career, because men are like houses. If that foundation is not built, if that foundation is not filled, and the foundation for a majority of men is career, if that foundation is not there, they cannot even begin to build that first floor, that second floor.
I agree with you. I actually agree with you.
So I
Yes.
do think that like there are two that's why our society is so polar, but there's somewhere in the middle. There's a happy medium. You don't have to be with a billionaire, but the whole analogy is so real because a man has to feel stable and secure in that element. Therefore, if a woman is dating, I don't think there's anything wrong with a woman looking at what's his career.
Yes.
You know, what's his
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Allie.
Yeah.
I think the happy medium is let's say two polar opposites here. You have the guy who has tons of money. He's well along in his career. He's established. He's respected in his community. He's living a life of virtue in addition to having all this stability. There's that guy. And then on the other side, you have the guy who is kind of not going anywhere. He's not trying to go anywhere. He might have serious substance abuse issues or other issues, other vices, other lusts, things like that. And he's not making progress and he's not trying to. So those are the opposites. I think in the middle is not necessarily, you meet this guy, you're going out on a first date. I don't think he needs to be so far along in his career or be so well established. I think the direction, observable direction, is more important than result at this moment. Because I mean, a lot of the people who are watching now, a lot of the folks we speak to are 22 to 27, and it's like, I don't know many 22-year-old guys right now, unless they had like a huge head start in life, who are all the way in their career, unless they had a tech startup at 17. You know what I mean? So it's like, however, if you're evaluating, if you're a 22-year-old girl and you meet a 22-year-old guy and you're looking to go out, yeah, he doesn't have to be rich. However,
look at their earning potential.
He has to show. He has to show promise. He has to show that he is on a path. He doesn't need to be at the end of the path, but he needs to show like direction.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's the medium.
I think direction. Exactly. They have to have direction. They have to have the purpose. They have to know where they're going. They have to know their North Star. They have to have a strong work ethic. Right. All of that. Absolutely. Yes.
Let me back up a little bit, because if what I said earlier did not seem like I was saying that at all, then let me back up. I do think men need to be established or on the right track, like you were saying, Nick. And so, yeah, on one side of it, there's a really high expectation that a lot of women seem to have these days. But on the other end, I think you guys are 100% correct. If a guy is not at least headed in the right direction or has a career path and is on the way to having the ability, if not already has the ability to provide for a family, for a wife and children, then yeah, he probably shouldn't be dating anyway.
Yeah.
So I agree.
Right.
Naomi, what do you think?
I think it comes down to, again, like dating with intention. So what's your intention and like what you're seeking for a man? If it's someone who's 6 foot tall, then that's the wrong intention, to be honest. Like, I think, again, this is a Christian podcast. So I think his like Christian values, where his faith's at, that should be the most important thing. And then everything else will like, you'll decide like whether it aligns or not. But I think just focusing on like your top, they say like 3 non-negotiables and then swiping based on that.
Wait, what's your 3 non-negotiables?
I'd say faith for sure. Ambition is important. So I do like how you're like, they don't have to be set. But again, I'm also dating as a 33-year-old. So it's different when you're dating at 23 versus 33. Because I've spent an entire decade already like building my own career. And I'm like, what were you doing for the last 10 years?
Right,
But maybe he's still working towards it. Like that's totally fine. But I think it is, important. And then I think that those are my top 2, I'd say. Like the rest, they're just like bonuses.
Yeah, Naomi, I kind of want to ask you. So continuing on, we're talking about the digital world, the digital space, all of how you encounter all this. If people are meeting online, if people are spending a lot of time texting and not talking in person, like what is holding them back? From what you can see, what is keeping people in this virtual space?
I mean, for me, it was insecurity and fear because online you could present this like perfect version of yourself and in person you don't really have that filter. So for me, for instance, like I really had to go through a season where I was just like, it was like me and God and he had to like really hammer in my identity and my worth. Like, cause I was seeking that in the beginning. I was looking for that validation from a guy and like I wanted to be seen by a guy and God's like, I already see you. And now that's how my like dating journey has changed in terms of like intention. Like before it was about my intention and my goal was to like feel pretty and beautiful because a guy was giving me attention versus now I'm going into like I already know I'm beautiful and I'm pretty and like now I just want someone who's like going to partner with me through life, right? And it's like again, what's the purpose behind getting married? What's the purpose behind dating? Like I actually, again, as someone who's never dated, which I used to view as a curse, I now see it as a blessing. And I'm like, thank you, God, for keeping me single throughout my 20s because my identity would have like morphed into that person. And there's like so many things I wouldn't have done with my life. And so I think even like dating in your early 20s, like unless you actually meet someone who's worth getting married to within that next year or two, like I don't think you even need to. Like go travel the world, focus on like your relationship with God, your career and all of that. Like it's a very hot take, which like the world tells you the opposite. Like I don't think we should be dating in high school, you know? Like we should not be having boyfriends at 14 years old.
I think
that's so challenging.
Yeah.
The young, like the high school relationships can be so crippling. Or they can be like they end up getting married and like having 17 kids.
Yeah, which is like very few, I think,
very
people
few.
are called to that.
Yeah. Oof. Wow.
Yeah. I do seriously appreciate your witness and your perspective on this because I think too many folks today who are single have this, maybe it's cultural, who knows, it comes from a lot of places, but this pressure to not be fulfilled, happy, feel like they are on their path, experiencing their true vocation from Christ. They feel they can't be that until they're in a relationship, until they're married, until that part of their life is. But then again, it's like if you're putting your life in Christ's hands and saying, I'm giving it to you, do with me as you will, it's on his time. It's on his time. So we really need to practice being not necessarily comfortable is a tricky word, but I do mean seriously comfortable in your identity as a child of God and know that you are fully like you are full, you are worthwhile, you are precious. Like this is even without somebody. And I think that will prepare you, that understanding of yourself will prepare you for a better relationship.
If a woman is dating in the world with good intentions, but, doesn't quite know how to vet all of these people that are coming into her life, and they don't necessarily have good intentions, it can be very traumatic.
That, and on the other side, if a man invests in somebody and then they break their heart, that's really, really tough. But both sides, of course, but that's like unbelievably destructive.
Yeah.
I think it's really tough because my mom worked full time growing up. She had to. And I think that what that does is it's really tough. So number one, I think that when you have a family, you have to love your wife and you have to love your husband and you have to love your children, right? And you have to figure out what's best for all parties. I think that one, you're gonna have that. If you're working all the time as a woman, you're gonna develop a sense of like that hyper independence, a little more masculine traits and whatnot. That might be difficult in your interactions with somebody you might be dating because you're used to this sort of being a certain way, and that might mess with sort of like the traction of having the opposites and the masculine and feminine, right? I think psychologically that could be an issue. So careful, like when you're dating people, like there's, I don't think I want like a really strong woman who's going to be like, hard to deal with and a little bit more combative. Like it's going to be very difficult for a lot of guys to want to be around that because they're going to work through the little stress they want. I think another thing with family dynamic, if kids are at home, you start to have kids and stuff, I think it's really important that there's a good book by Erica Commissar called Being There, and how important it is for mom to be home when the kids are growing up. Yeah. What that does for the sense of safety and whatnot. And I know for me personally, there was difficulties when I was growing up. Yeah. I was difficult, but I think that was also because of that sense of like lack of that safety and that you normally would have as with your mom being there. And so that's just me personally. I had to go through that, get through that. But I would say that it's really important for mom to be there. So if you're going to have this huge career and stuff, I understand we live in 2026, bills have to be paid and everything. But I think that the dynamic where mom is somehow there, maybe work from home or something, is really, really important for the development of children. So whether you have this huge career or not, like I would say, you have to prioritize what's best for your family. My mom did what she had to do. And I being a young kid, couldn't really understand that so much. Mm-hmm. But now as an adult, I highly admire her and I love her for that because she did what she had to do. And so in that sense, there's only admiration and love. But at the same time that I know that there were certain things within myself that as a kid definitely did not make it easy for me, Mm-hmm. And so had to grow and get past those things. But I'm sorry, I'm being a little personal, but I want to be honest.
No, that's beautiful. Yeah. I think something that I've learned through working with these hyper-independent women, because they're the best, I love them with my whole heart and soul. I've learned that if we teach them to have the mantra of let him lead, let him lead, like just flip that work switch off and vacation mode on and literally just allow the guy. Because there's also with that, what we were talking about a lot of times, if it is a hyper independent woman, she's maybe learned that men can't be trusted. Therefore, I'm going to do this. So the best way to combat that is allow a guy to do these little things. Allow a guy, if you're at a restaurant, and if you're a something that like easy tips that I give to when I meet a woman that is coming in like hyper independent with that energy, I'm like, that is beautiful. And that's basically like a trauma response because you had to do this. You had to do everything, and you can, and you do it well, honey. You do it well, and you look good while you're doing it. Amen, amen. But men want to be appreciated. So if a woman is allowing a man, if a man is opening the door for her, just doing all the gentlemanly chivalric things, it's then giving gratitude and saying, thank you, you're such a gentleman. Right. So like affirming that in the man and showing him that you have a role in my life, like that there is a role for this man to have in a woman's life. Yeah.
And I think by allowing the guy to do that, it also gives you evidence and proves to you that guy is someone 100%. Worthy of because I think again, it takes the right kind of guy because a lot of guys just don't do that. Right. But we also have to allow them. So it's like a balancing act, like a dance, right?
Yeah. So in my experience here, so my wife is So there's a couple different ways that we could define the independent personality or something. But my wife is highly independent, and by that I mean she is extremely capable person. We both work. She's very, very good at what she does. She's had a career for a while, and she's just extremely capable. in so many ways that, well, really, I'm not. But we help each other. We
The feminine genius.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
but she is an extremely capable person, and because of that, she is capable of independence because she literally does not need another person to survive. However, if you're going into a relationship to have somebody take care of you, I don't know if that's the right goal. Like seriously, I think you can enter into a relationship with the goal of being like, hey, you and me are individuals and we're good. We're good on our own. We're actually fully actualized sons and daughters of Christ, of God, and we're okay. We will be okay apart. However, when we get together, this third thing that we have, this relationship, is a better thing. It is a better path forward than our individual paths. I'm not dependent on you, but it is better being with you because our strengths multiply when we get together. Yes, I don't do everything for her and she doesn't do everything for me, but together, combining our strengths, we are stronger in a way that we just did not know was possible apart.
Yeah.
So I think that's where it's okay to be independent in the world because you don't want to be a child.
Yes.
You want to be able to take care of yourself, but it's okay to depend on another when you've entered into that contract.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
I think there's also the human animal. Like this wonderful expert, Allison Armstrong. I don't know if you guys have heard of Allison. She's amazing, Allison Armstrong. She's written 1 million books. And I'm rereading a book that she wrote called Understanding Women. But it's actually a lot about men as well, because I'm always trying to understand the male brain. It's this elusive.
I think it's pretty easy to understand.
No, I know. That's what guys
We've
say.
got we're the simple ones.
That's what they say. That's what they say. But she describes it, and I love this. She describes it as the human animal. Like the instinct is like human animal versus human spirit. But
Right.
it's also so fascinating because human animal wise, instinctually, women are, if we're going back to cave woman times, we needed protection from men. We needed that. But that's also why a lot of times when women come in and they say they're looking for certain things, they're looking for a tall man. What does that actually mean? Why do you want a tall man? It's because you want somebody that you feel protected by.
That's why every guy needs to work out.
It's a proxy for something far deeper.
Yes, 100%.
You don't have to marry a guy who's 6 feet tall.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys, a lot of great guys who are not
Amazing
6 feet
men.
tall. Come on.
Yeah.
I think the thing with dating apps is it's made like it's really made us think like, oh, there could be someone better out there, right? Just the abundance of choices that exist. But I think to combat that, it's like bringing back community into dating. Like before, even like back in the day, before love was the reason for marriage, it was like your community, like your parents had to say, your elders had to say. So I think even bringing back your friends, they can help you to see more clearly and make that decision so that you're not just sitting there by yourself. And then obviously, if you're a Christian, like leaning into God's voice, like we can hear God's voice. He speaks to us, like he can help give you clarity if you just ask him. So.
And if you're not afraid to listen, and then also like act on it sometimes, even though it's hard.
Yeah. It's still going to be scary.
It's scary and
I
hard.
think that is so true. The indecision gets amplified because we feel like there's endless options, and we're like we're like an additional step removed from the actual person in front of us.
Yes.
Because they're just a choice on a screen.
Paradox
And
of
it's-
choice.
oh, it's
very
terrible.
easy to go, well, if this has even just a modicum of what I don't want, then next,
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
like a, what do you call it, conveyor belt of
Yeah.
choices.
And I've definitely fell into the trap of trying to build a husband. I think most women, maybe even men, do that as well, where it's like, yeah, like if they don't have
I won't
everything on
build
the
a husband,
checklist,
but
maybe build a wife.
Can you just tell us your in-person dating journey really quickly? Because we
Yes.
never got to it, but I really wanted to. Can you just tell us, like, did you meet people? Like, how did that go?
Yeah, I mean,
was it hard?
Yeah, for me,
Yeah.
it was just a personal challenge because I'm very introverted and shy, and I don't make eye contact with anyone. Like, I walk around with my head down, and I was realizing that was a lot of why I felt invisible most of my life. And then, so I challenged myself to like meet people in real life, like go to a coffee shop, start a conversation, compliment someone, make eye contact. And I realized like, okay, that does make you more open, approachable, and then also just makes the world a friendlier place. Like, would Jesus go around with his head on his, like, down looking at his phone? Like, no, just like be friendly. I think that was what I learned through that journey. I mean, I'm still a single Pringle.
that's awesome. That's
but-
awesome. Though.
Studies have shown that the women that get approached the most are the most approachable. You guys, thank you so much for being here.
Yes.
What a delight. What a conversation.
This has been a blast. Naomi, Sean, thank you both so much for being here. I've enjoyed this immensely. I hope we can do it again soon.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Thank
Of
you very
course.
much, guys.
Thank you guys so much. Take care, y'all.